The world is mad. Up is down, left is right, good is bad, war is peace, slavery is freedom, and ignorance is, of course, strength. We've lost touch with our ancestors. We've lost touch with history. And most of all, we've lost touch with the truth. Where we once put natural law, the law of God, the family, and our people at the forefront of our existence, it's degenerated into a communistic, anti-truth nightmare. What was once good is now somehow oppressive, and what was societal cancer is somehow now the height of culture and all that is good. Something to cheer on rather than shamed and ostracised. We silence, threaten, demean, and bankrupt anyone who has the courage to stand against it. Those truly in charge utterly hate truth. They despise humanity, which is why they work tirelessly to destroy us. They recruit many to their army of the lies. Most don't even know their real master. One sergeant just happens to be the Premier of Victoria, the clown known as Dick Ears, although his birth certificate would call him Daniel Andrews. He's arguably done more to damage our nation and people than any other parasite currently in the Australian political class. But it gets worse. He is now consciously acting against the immediate interests of all Australians. He is doing something that puts us all at risk, and he's doing it all for Dan. Just a quick message. Whether it's an algorithm hiding content or outright deletion, internet censorship is on the rise. Please consider following me on free speech websites Gab, Minds, and BitChute. I'm constantly posting content, and they are a great way to stay notified of uploads. Can't wait to see you there. Daniel Andrews is the Premier of Victoria, although despite having the official title, calling him Premier would be a little bit too much respect. In reality, he's a self-appointed dictator ruling over what he deems his personal fiefdom. It all started before he won his first election. His own party stole taxpayer money in order to campaign in key seats. When caught, he refused to answer questions from the police. He thought he'd get away with it. He thought he could try and stop the investigation. Rather than admit this blatant corruption, he spent a further $1 million fighting requests for information and took it all the way to the High Court. To top it all off, once found guilty of stealing taxpayer money and using it to campaign fraudulently, he refused to resign and thus told everyone in Victoria that he would do whatever he wanted with our money. This was by no means the only lie he told to steal the election. Before the very same election, he told everyone that he could tear up multi-billion-dollar contracts without cost. Not worth the paper they were printed on, was the claim. Then, upon winning, he proceeded to tear up the contracts, only to be hit with a $1 billion cost. That's right, $1 billion of your money to do literally nothing. The government at the time warned him it would cost them potentially billions to cancel the contract, but Daniel Andrews cancelled it anyway. Now, 4 years after stealing an election through lies and outright theft, he's committing his greatest betrayal yet. He's going ahead with the building of a huge mosque in a small Victorian town called Bendigo. He's even pledging $400,000 of Victorians' money to help assist the build. This comes after years of resistance from various groups, including the now defunct United Patriots Front, who staged several protests in the area, along with Reclaim Australia, that was attended by thousands of people. The establishment was so angry that Australians would dare resist their anti-white, anti-Christian agenda that they charged 3 protest leaders with blasphemy. From The Age, and I quote, 3 far-right activists who staged a mock beheading in protest at plans to build a mosque have been found guilty, convicted and fined for a criminal offence under Victoria's racial vilification laws. United Patriots Front members Blair Cottrell, Christopher Shortis and Neil Erickson were all found guilty by a magistrate of inciting contempt, revulsion or ridicule of Muslims. End quote. These three men committed the apparent grievous crime of beheading a dummy on camera. Not a single individual was hurt, yet the Daniel Andrews establishment dragged them through the courts and fined them thousands of dollars, claiming Muslims might not like it. This despite the fact that Victoria has a Charter of Human Rights that is supposed to protect freedom of thought, conscience, religion and belief, freedom of expression, peaceful assembly, and freedom of association. This despite Australia signing the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights that declares Australians' right to freedom of opinion and expression. This despite the fact that freedom of political communication is a right protected by the Australian Constitution as ruled repeatedly by our highest court, the High Court of Australia. Patriot political activist Blair Cottrell challenged the decision on the grounds of our rights, as mentioned, and the trial is set to begin in the coming weeks at the time of publishing this video. Regarding the mosque the three men charged with blasphemy were protesting, Dick Ears Dan has all but told people they have no right to protest it. If you dare stand against this symbol of your own ethnic and religious replacement, he will quickly silence you. All criticism is hand-waved as bigotry, and Andrews claims it was mostly outsiders protesting. The truth tells a different story. From XYZ defector and Antifa commie hunter of the Unshackled, Lucas Rosas, and I quote, "Despite Daniel Andrews dismissing the mosque opponents as out-of-towners who couldn't even spell Bendigo, the anti-mosque campaign was clearly a grassroots effort. More than 400 objections were lodged by local councils against the mosque's planning application, and at one council meeting, 200 very loud locals packed the gallery and demanded the mayor's resignation as terrified councillors were escorted away by police." End quote. Knowing the local community are against this planned symbol of Islamic conquest, Dick Ears is using taxpayer-funded police to provide extra protection for the building site. Not one to shy away from satanic inversion of truth, he made this statement, and I quote, "It's been difficult at times, and there's no shying away from that. But with all the approvals in place, and with the sod turned, I think that sense of goodwill having won out over some pretty dark views, we're in a pretty good place, and we should be very proud. Bigotry is not an acceptable form of protest. Ignorance is no excuse when it comes to these things." End quote. So you see, it's not the people of Bendigo who are the victim of his arrogance and disdain for their wishes. It's not the people of Victoria who are the victim of his lies. He's really the victim because people have made pushing his agenda difficult. It's not those he dragged through the courts for years, or those who have been slandered, defamed and attacked by the media relentlessly. It's actually poor old Dick Ears Dan. As for the claim that the locals aren't opposed to this mosque, well, the community want it so much that the government has to force people through the courts simply for protesting it, and then step up protection of it, and they are protecting themselves from that same local community. Daniel Andrews has made it clear to all Victorians that he is the unquestioned ruler of this state. He will do whatever he wants. If you dare challenge him, if you dare stand up for ordinary people, he will crush you and ruin your life. The fact that he won a second term is proof that universal democracy is an utter failure of a political system. If you let fools and parasites vote, you cannot be surprised if you get a foolish and dishonest parasite as self-appointed overlord. How ironic that about the same time Andrews started building this mosque, he also released an LGBTIQP language guide for all in the public service. Perhaps Daniel Andrews might want to organise a transgender story hour when this monstrosity of a mosque is finally built. Maybe a gay and lesbian Mardi Gras to be held in the mosque as part of a grand opening. Surely, since diversity and tolerance are our strength, these Muslim people will be more than happy to let the gays spread their love within their place of worship. They wouldn't want to be intolerant bigots now, would they? Not a single person voted for this mosque, and a significant number of people already living in Bendigo have indicated that they are strongly against it. But wait, someone says, surely they are building it to serve a large Muslim population, right? There must be a large number of Muslims in Bendigo, right? Wrong. In 2016, the Islamic population of Bendigo made up barely 0.4% of it, totaling a whopping 466 people, making it barely the 10th largest religion in the city, behind both Hindus and Buddhists. You see, this project has absolutely nothing to do with serving a local Islamic population and everything to do with attracting Muslims to the town. It is literally a plan to turn Bendigo into an Islamic area, and the Premier of the state, who also sees fit to crush all dissent, is pushing it through whether you like it or not. We need to call this exactly what it is: a betrayal of not just the people of Bendigo, not just the people of Victoria, but of all Australians. Daniel Andrews swore an oath to represent the people of Victoria, yet he is acting directly against our interests, oppressing us and ruining our lives in the process. If Australian society was healthy, the people would remove him from power as soon as possible. Alas, most people are too busy playing video games and getting drunk on the weekend to care about the wholesale destruction and theft of their own country. We do need to get the word out quickly. One problem Australians are now dealing with is the ever-growing issue of Middle Eastern drug gangs. These gangs are extremely violent and do not respect Australians at all. Why would they? Not only did our apparent representatives invite them in against the direct interests of the people, but those same representatives do absolutely nothing about the problem that they imported. These gangs terrorise our streets while our police officers spend their time raising revenue. Those who dared to travel 3% over the speed limit must be much worse than assault and intimidation and running drugs through our streets. Police harass Australians on the road while foreigners fight over the right to poison us with drugs like ice, one of the most dangerous, addictive and damaging drugs ever created. If you thought this was the worst of it, you'd be wrong. It gets a whole lot worse than simply a few ethnic gangs shooting at each other. A quick warning, the following is likely to make you quite angry. From Patriot activist Sherman Burgess, and I quote, "One thing I noticed when I lived in Sydney is that when you went into the richer upper class areas or Marxist class left-wing suburbs, such as Newtown, they were mostly pro-immigration and would get massively snobby and scream at you if you said anything bad against third world immigration. The funny thing is, both these classes of suburbs have a large white Anglo population. When you go to suburbs such as Bankstown, Lakemba, Greenacre and Punchbowl, where the whites are much more of a minority and the suburb is heavily Muslim populated, the white Anglo inhabitants of the area will tell you how much they hate the immigration and the crime that comes with it. One white couple told me of how a bearded Muslim pulled up in his driveway, blocking his wife's car in because their daughter had an argument with his daughter at school and he had a large hunting knife and was pretending to slash his own throat while he said, "Next time your daughter even looks at mine, I will her throat and then come and yours." When the mother and father went to the police and the school, nothing happened. Not one arrest, nothing. Another guy refused to talk to me, saying it's not worth getting shot or stabbed for talking about what goes on here. I have to live here, mate. I agree with you and what you do, but I have to live here, and yeah, you know what will happen if I'm on film and they see my face. It was crazy. No one wanted to speak on camera because they were scared of revenge attacks. The ones that did speak out said it had to be off camera. When I said, why don't all the white Aussies get together and fight back, the answer I got was the police will arrest us and let them go, because when they go to the police about us doing something wrong, we get harassed and arrested. When they do it to us, they get a knock on the door, then they call the police racist white dogs, and the police run with their tail between their legs. Even if we did fight back, we would still get smashed. There are way more of them than us here now, and they have a lot of guns and ammunition. Most whites are scared and just lock their doors and stay inside at the first sign of conflict. Most whites only stay here because they can't afford to move to Cronulla or somewhere else where there are a lot of whites and hardly any Muslims. It is for this reason I am now glad I live in a country town and I am no longer living in the city, shithole known as Sydney." End quote. If that doesn't upset you greatly, then you have no place in this country. Not only are Australian people terrorised by foreigners, but the police refuse to do anything meaningful about it. Australians suffer for actions taken by parasites who live nowhere near any of the consequences they create. Never were we asked if this was acceptable. Never was there a vote over whether or not we should suffer violent ethnic gangs. Never was there a vote on whether we should become minorities in our own countries. In fact, whenever anyone offers the Australian people a vote on the issue, the parasite class quickly shuts it down. From the West Australian, and I quote, "Pauline Hanson's push to have a national vote on immigration levels has been crushed in the Senate. The One Nation leader on Monday asked the upper house to support a plebiscite arguing the country's roads and health system were buckling under the weight of new migrants. But Senator Hanson and her party room colleague Malcolm Roberts were the only votes in favour of the bill, which was thrashed 54 votes to 2. End quote. Not only do these anti-white parasites refuse to give us a say on who comes here, they harass, slander and attempt to silence anyone who dares call it out. These parasites censured Australian legend, former bad boy Senator Fraser Anning, simply for telling the truth. Dick Ears Daniel Andrews is a product of our times. An utterly corrupt liar who puts his own self-interest above the interests of his people and even his own family, who are Australians after all. He cares more about keeping power and reaping material benefits than he does about safety, community harmony, economic prosperity, or the future of our nation. He is the result of a selfishness and apathy that runs through the Victorian electorate, along with the flooding of our territory with foreigners against the will of the people that he's sworn to represent, of course. The country and the system are corrupted and morally broken, so we get a corrupt and morally bankrupt leader. He works for a system that is hell-bent on destroying us all. But thankfully, this system is built on a house of cards, and this house of cards is built by lies and corruption, and it's going to collapse eventually, since it's designed to do just that. Just understand that at this point, a democratic solution is unlikely. The parasites rig the game to fix themselves into power forever and make it impossible to challenge them. It might all seem lost, but we should never lose faith. This should not be a black pill. It should fill you with hope, as it means we have the opportunity to start building something new, something better. Something that will last thousands of years, where parasites like Daniel Andrews are genuinely punished for their lies and the cost they impose on our people. The old will perish, and from the ashes will rise a new kingdom built on truth, consciousness, universal morality, and the laws set down by God at the dawn of time. As for Dick Ears, eventually we all pay for our sins in one way or another. He might be laughing right now, but karma has a way of hitting you right where it hurts and when you least expect it. Keep fighting, keep telling the truth. Refuse to bow to these cretins. If we all stand up together, there's nothing that they can do to stop us. I hope you enjoyed the video. Share the truth around, and I'll see ya when I see ya.